Have you ever wondered what role the Russian Orthodox Church played in the history of Ukraine? It was not only a religious institution, but also a powerful instrument of imperial policy. For centuries, this church promoted Russification, justified repression, and supported Russia's imperial ambitions, acting as part of the state apparatus. 1775. A black day, marked in blood in our history. By order of Catherine II, with the tacit blessing of the Moscow priests, the Zaporozhian Sich, a center of freedom and independence, was razed to the ground. The Cossacks were dispersed, tortured, and killed, and those who remained were forced to obey the imperial crown. And where was the church? It did not protect. It did not stand by the people. It obeyed the executioners and betrayed its own. The Sich was destroyed, the Cossacks were dispersed, Ukraine was chained. This cry through the centuries reminds us of the betrayal that became the first step towards the enslavement of our people. Peter I used the Russian Church as an obedient instrument in his wars of aggression. It sanctified his campaigns, justified bloodshed, and called on the people to obey the God-given Tsar. She was silent when in 1708 the troops of Peter I brutally destroyed Bachrin, the capital of the Ukrainian hetman Ivan Mazepa. Tens of thousands of civilians were slaughtered or drowned in blood. The Russian Church not only did not condemn this crime, but also blessed the punishers. Hetman Ivan Mazepa, who sought to free Ukraine from the imperial yoke, became an enemy not only of Peter I, but also of the Russian Church. By order of the Tsar in 1788, the Patriarch of Moscow declared him an anathema, a curse that Moscow used as a political weapon against all who tried to fight for independence. And to this day, this anathema remains a symbol of colonial enslavement, although the real sin was not Mazepa's, but those who betrayed their own people. The Russian Church not only enslaved Ukrainians, but also brutally dealt with its own people. In 1681, a local council of the Moscow Church was held, which, in order to overcome the people's resistance to the transition to the Greek faith, asked the Tsar to execute and burn old believer churches, monasteries, books and, of course, the most rebellious believers. In 1682, a spectacular mass execution of supporters of the old faith took place. This was another proof that the Moscow Church was never a stronghold of spirituality, only a submissive executor of the will of the autocrats. From Peter I to Stalin, from Valuev to Beria, the Russian Church was the most faithful servant of the empire. It destroyed the Ukrainian word, Ukrainian thought, Ukrainian spirit. It cursed our culture, made us forget who we are. It imposed a foreign language even in churches. The Russian Church used and still uses in its liturgies not the Ukrainian language, but the artificially created Old Slavonic or Russian, which is a tool of Russification, an instrument of the destruction of our national identity. This is not faith. This is spiritual enslavement that has lasted for centuries. Forget your language, your history. You are Russians. This was the message carried by the church hierarchs, turning the freedom-loving people into a faceless mass. Priests like Filaret, Amphiteatrov, openly declared, "The little Russian people are part of the great Russian people, and their duty is to serve Russia." This was not faith, but slavery, which they were forced to accept under the guise of piety. Today, Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine. And what is the Russian Church doing? It blesses murders, supports aggression, calls genocide a holy struggle. Moscow Patriarch Kirill openly preaches hatred, consecrates missiles that bomb our cities, and in the basements of the churches of the Moscow Patriarchate, arsenals of weapons and FSB agents are found. The priests of the Russian Church are not shepherds, but spies. Their churches are not places of prayer, but centers of subversive activity against Ukraine. They work for the enemy, incite hatred, recruit agents, support the occupation. For centuries, the Russian Church has served as an instrument of oppression of Ukraine, betrayed our people and supported the invaders. We must know our history, remember its lessons, and choose our path consciously. God is not in power, but in truth. Let these words of Shevchenko become our guide.